We now back with a fan favorite here at Tee It Up. We are doing Q's with P. We got producer Christian here. Shout out to everybody that participated. A lot of great questions. We got some crazy stuff too, but a lot of great questions, a lot of insightful stuff. Christian, what we got, man? I saw some on my timeline, but I want to see what you had picked out for us.
We'll get to the crazy ones later. Let's start with just some
Hey,
playoff
one guy,
questions.
I wish I remember his name. He tweeted me like 15 times.
We'll
He
get one of
he
his up.
he made sure he was gonna get on this episode. So shout out to him. I like that type of stuff.
Let's start with this one's from Bray at Rockets Hate Me. If the
Okay.
Rockets lose in round one to a depleted Lakers team, will Ime Udoka be fired?
So I'm a big fan of Ime. I'm a big fan of the Rockets. I do think that they've had an underwhelming season for sure. And though I would not want to see him get fired, I think you would have to really think about that because as of right now, we're expected this series to not have Luca, to not have Austin Reeves, and just a 41-year-old LeBron James with DeAndre Ayton, Rui. That team should not be beating the Houston. That team shouldn't take the Houston Rockets past 6 games, if we're being honest, let alone beating them. So as much as I love Ime and as much as faith as I have in the Rockets, I do think if the Lakers beat them in a 7-game series with all of that going on, you would have to look into that. That would be something that would be kind of crazy. You would not only and I don't think firing the coach would be enough. You probably at that point would have to look into some roster changes because that sounds like somebody also didn't perform at a certain level, right? Like everybody outside of Kevin Durant just didn't show up. Because it's hard to imagine that both Kevin Durant and Sengun show up and play at their potential, and you lose that series. That just doesn't sound right. So yeah, at that point, I think you would have to look into that. The question is, would the Rockets feel that they would need to actually do that? It's one thing to look into it and for it to cross your mind, but would the Rockets actually pull the plug on Ime because he has been a part of the turnaround?
Next up from B Young 5. Who is the most likely team, in your opinion, to have the most unexpected Pacers-like finals run?
So one thing I was telling D Mills, I think last week, um, was I think we at times do a disservice to the Pacers by calling it like this run. And don't get me wrong, in a literal sense, it was a run. But like it's like this hot streak. I think D Mills was like, yeah, they just got hot. And I had to tell D Mills, like, nah, I honestly think all of us were just asleep. The world was asleep. Outside of the Pacers and their fan base, a lot of us were just apparently sleep. Because it's hard to just get hot like that for that long. Right? They were the underdogs in every single series. They won every game one on the road. And then even when they got to the finals, we was like, all right, well, here's the actual juggernaut of the Oklahoma City Thunder. They'll just probably actually finally handle it. And no, they took them to 7 games, and it looked like they were going to have a chance to compete and win that game on the road as well before the Tyrese Halliburton injury. So I know we are all fascinated with who that team could be, but when I look, I really don't see much, but I will say to answer the question, if there was a team, it would have to be the Atlanta Hawks. Based off the second half of the season, I believe since February, they're like 22-9. They look like a completely different team than the first half of the season. Jalen Johnson, Nikhil Alexander Walker, the pace that they like to play with, getting in transition. They have the athletes. They have shooting with Buddy Hield and Corey Kispert. They have a defensive specialist in Dyson Daniels. Nikhil holds his own as well. So that would be the one team because you imagine if the Hawks were able to upset the Knicks, that means at that point they have a chance to pretty much beat anybody out east for the most part. And so I would have to say if it's going to be anybody, for me, stylistically and talent-wise, I would say the Atlanta Hawks. But I wouldn't condition ourselves to just think we're going to get a Pacers type situation every year. Kind of like when the Heat made it to the finals in the bubble. Everybody was no, not the bubble. In the second play in, everybody was like, "Oh, who could be the next Heat?" I just think some of these teams we shouldn't get accustomed to seeing every so often.
What's so interesting to me about like that Heat run and the Pacers run, obviously, like you're right, it's completely different from a obviously a March Madness single game elimination
Mhm.
situation where, one team just has an awful shooting night and a couple crazy things happen. But even within those 7-game series, there's a couple of those moments of those breaks that have to go your way
Yep.
to even give yourself. Obviously, those teams were really good and better than their seeds, but like think about obviously Halliburton shot against the Knicks, hitting the back rim and
Neesmith.
going up.
I think
And
about
the Nice, yeah,
Neesmith.
it was that
Yeah,
huge. How much were they down? Was it?
like 12,
Yeah,
and
so like
Neesmith
even
hit
bigger
like
than
3
that.
threes in a row.
Um, and then against the Cavs, right? They had a 7-point comeback in the final minute, and the Cavs had some injuries. So even they needed some things to break their way. But I agree. Once they got to the Thunder series and actually played with the Juggernaut that close,
Yeah,
it's
it
like,
was
okay, this isn't
crazy.
a Cinderella.
Yeah. Yep.
Um, so this one's from Mango with the Squidward profile picture. We feel like he's
Mango is gonna ask me about his team.
which is the Portland Trail Blazers. So he says this is a bit team specific, but if you were the Blazers organization, who would you rather face in a first round series? Or would you rather favor the idea of keeping your pick in a deep draft like this and maybe playing 2 competitive games, but ultimately dropping out of the playoffs? Kind of makes you think of Dallas last year. Like if Dallas won that playing game, they don't get Cooper Flag.
And because of that, I probably lean with the perspective that Mango has. Because I would imagine for Mango as a fan, he's probably thinking to himself, okay, if we play the Thunder, as much as I'm a fan of my team, as much as I like our team, what are the Blazers really going to do with the Thunder, right? And I don't blame him. I actually appreciate fans like him that have more perspective than to just be a blind fan thinking that you're going to beat any and everybody, because that oftentimes brings just a lot of disappointment. But I will say the part that kind of we don't think about as fans is the experience, right? It's being able to have this young team without Damian Lillard get a taste of the playoffs, what the playoffs are like, the difference between the regular season and the playoffs. I think it could actually be beneficial for the Donovan Klingons of the world, the Denny's. A lot of people have had the conversation of what will Denny's game look like in a playoff setting? How could it translate? Will it translate? Will it not? Will he get exposed? So I think some of that experience would help. So when you get Dame back, you want to take another step. But it's hard to rule out the point that he is making, especially off the back of what you just said. The fact that the Mavericks, they did that and it turned into Cooper Flag. If you're the Blazers and that was to turn into Cam Boozer or Peterson or AJ DeBonsa, I mean, who's turning that down? But then it also is you do that and you kind of stay where you are, and and then at that point it's like what you sacrifice the playoffs to be at 10 or 11. You know what I'm saying? So I think it's about probably getting that experience, unless you really were a big believer that y'all would jump up. But who do I like them against? Man, probably the Thunder, because we talked about it earlier on numbers on the board. I mean, if your go-to guy is going to be Denny and he's trying to get downhill, Vic is going to make that very, very hard for him to do. So, in that standpoint, I guess I'd rather see you go against the Thunder, and even in that standpoint, they're going to do the opposite. They don't necessarily have a Vic, but then they have all of these perimeter guys, Caruso, Kaysen, so it's a nightmare either or.
Last one in this playoff specific segment of Q's with P, we've got Caleb Hager saying, what specific matchups are you hoping by the conference finals storyline wise? Back-to-back champions will be legendary, but the story of the expectations of the Spurs towards the beginning of the season calls for a fun underdog energy. Also the East matchups too. So what I guess would your dream conference finals matchups be?
So Spurs, I definitely want to be a part of it. Um, as a producer of this show, I feel like I was on the Spurs being
Mhm.
as good of a team before anybody. I think I was saying that before De'Aaron Fox actually played a game for them this year. So I'm rooting for the Spurs in every way possible. Um, who for them to I guess the Thunder. What a story that would be. These two young teams match up, the two best teams out west. They're in the conference finals. They're battling it out. Um, because they can't go against the Nuggets. I think they and the Nuggets would match up in the second round. So at that point, yeah, I would like to see Vic against Shea, and it creates this thing. In a perfect world, the Lakers potentially would be healthy, and you could see the Lakers going some type of run, and you have 41-year-old LeBron James and it's the new guy and Vic who may take over the league. And that would be like a dope Western Conference Finals because you would have Vic, you would still have Luca, but the storyline would be like LeBron's last hoorah against this new guy who's finally arrived. That would be very fun. And then um, out east, Celtics and Knicks would be the dream, but I believe they play against each other in the second round. You know what I mean? And I'm a Knicks fan, but like to get that series again, and could you imagine if what is the word? The redemption story of Jason Tatum playing against the team, playing in the building where his injury happened and being able to somehow get revenge and go off to the NBA finals. I think even as a Knicks fan, that would be a dope story, right? Um, so yeah, or Knicks versus Cavs. These are two teams that everybody thought was going to be at the top of the Eastern Conference. They weren't. And now a lot of people are counting both of those teams out, right? The Pistons dominated the whole season. Then Tatum came back to the Celtics, and people are looking at the Celtics as the favorite. For all of that to happen, for the Cavs and the Knicks to have kind of like underwhelming years, but still successful because they won 50 games, and people to kind of count both teams out, but they somehow get it together for the playoffs and face each other in the conference finals anyway, that would be a dope storyline too. That would be a
Would you
super dope storyline.
would you have rather the Knicks have been in that 4-5 game? Would you rather play the Detroit than Boston in the second round?
If I'm being completely honest, yeah, but I kind of like the series against the Celtics too, just as a fan. But yeah, matchup wise, I would definitely prefer to play the Pistons over the Celtics. The Celtics are a very dangerous team, you know what I mean, as they've shown us. And yeah, I'd damn near pick anybody in the Eastern Conference than the Celtics, if I'm just being honest. But storyline wise, that will be dope to see Jason Tatum play against the Knicks, win or lose, just to be able the redemption story. That happened a year ago, and he would already be back. That's going to be super dope if both teams are able to handle their business.